Welcome back to Money Matters. This is DCrowell from Mortgage Network, and in this second half of Money Matters, I'm going to discuss the wider world. In the first half, I discussed the local real estate market and what its internal economics are at the moment. So you've had that snapshot. Here's the snapshot of the bigger world out there. We are seeing continued excitement and drama out of Washington, D.C. Today, which is a Thursday, I believe it's the 4th of May, the drama of today is the presentation for the third time of a Republican plan for the overhaul of Obamacare. The news that's breaking is that this third version, which is being voted on today, I believe, in the House of Representatives, will indeed get passed by the House by the slimmest of margins, but it does appear that it will get passed. The substance of the legislation, which will most certainly cut back on the availability or the cost availability for insurance for somewhere in the vicinity of 20 to 24 million Americans over the next period of years. That's certainly going to meet enormous resistance in the House of in the Senate. So it's not at all clear that a health care repeal and overhaul will make it through the Senate. The importance of it making its way through the House was obviously to put some sort of momentum-creating signature legislation at least on the table, and that has certainly happened. The White House and the House of Representatives have certainly succeeded in making health care a central part of the national conversation. Now, the economic consequences are very, very far-reaching. The United States remains the only country in which healthcare is treated as a market-based commodity, as opposed to a right guaranteed by the state, by the government. Those are essentially the two fundamental positions, with Democrats tending toward the latter view, which is that health care is a right, should be universally available to all, and paid for and guaranteed by the government, with the Republicans tending toward the view that health care is a choice and should be market priced, and is a commodity that needs to be bargained in the open market by each citizen. In the center is virtually everyone. So there's little appetite in the United States still. We are alone, remember, amongst all industrialized nations. There's still little appetite here or support here for a universal healthcare system run by the government. There is also little appetite in the 10% range in both categories, little appetite for an entirely market-based approach to healthcare, which is the position of the Freedom Caucus and other more right-wing sections of the Republican Party. Almost everybody is in the middle, and it's extraordinary that a more functional, can't be developed out of this major population of people in the middle. What everybody wants is a version of universal health care that would pay for itself, that would be market competitive, that would have a market basis to the pricing, that would force pharmaceutical companies and providers to be competitive, but which at the same time subsidizes the cost of insurance for people who can't afford a true market price. So part and parcel of all of this is in this very complicated healthcare debate is that there are certain standards or definitions of what it constitutes to have health care. Do you really have health care if you don't have mental health care? Do you really have health care if you don't have a component of health care for birthing and pregnancy and all associated health costs with the bearing and care of infant children? Do you really have health? Now, what you can immediately say, of course, is, well, I'm a man, so I don't have that problem. But that's where the argument gets very difficult from an economic perspective. Do you really have health care if all pharmaceutical costs are not wrapped in? Do you really have health care if excluded from that health care is the cost of end-of-life care? Do you really have health care if excluded from that health care is the cost of major illnesses or pre-existing conditions? So there are these various components, all of which are, as we say, definitional as to what it really means to have a universal healthcare system. Can you really cut them apart and say, well, I'll take the bit that has to do with emergency health care and I'll leave the rest. So I'll only pay $200 a month, and it's my option as a free man, as a free citizen, to exclude, in my case, all the other aspects because it's financially convenient for me to do so at the moment, because I am currently healthy and so on, versus a healthcare system that has all of the pieces of the pie in place for every single citizen, whether they think they need them or not. So underlying all of this is a set of financial principles, which is really the point of this conversation. This half of the show, I've just talked about healthcare, not for the purposes of getting into the debate, but in order to expose the financial underpinnings. Massive piece of our economy, somewhere between 18 and 20% of our entire gross domestic product, GDP, is healthcare. The only way that a rational healthcare system can be put together, whether it's run by the government or it's run by the 10 or 12 largest insurance companies, all of the financial principles come down to a pooling of risk. The marketplace, left to its own devices, will pool the risk and assess the different risk components. The government, if it takes over in its entirety the healthcare responsibility, will pool the risk and assess its cost and make its future provisions for finance based upon that risk analysis. Essential to a pooling of risk is the inclusion in the healthcare system of all the healthy people. Otherwise, you really don't have a healthcare system. What you have is a bunch of healthy people who do precisely as they wish, and a small segment of elderly and sick people who cost 70 or 80 cents of every healthcare dollar. The only way that you can sever the two is if the government takes on the responsibility for all elderly people and all people who get really sick. Those are called high-risk pools, and they're a great idea in concept, but the problem is that when you try to put it into practice, nobody wants to pay for it. Certainly the government chokes at paying for it. So we're right as a country in the middle of that debate right now. It's fascinating, and next week I hope we can return to it and talk about the economic consequences of any changes to the healthcare law. Thank you very much. This is David Crowell for Money Matters.